Hey guys, can you hear me? If all of you can hear me fine, then please say yes on the live chat. I'll wait for 10 more seconds. Okay, I see a response. I assume that all of you can hear me. So, good evening and good morning to everyone from wherever you are in the world, and I hope you all are staying safe. So, welcome to this another session of MBAlytical 2021. So, guys, in the past session, we have covered a lot about the MBA, the application process, post MBA experience, role of GMAT, along with other things. Today, however, we are going to discuss a different kind of management course, which is more suitable for candidates with fewer experience and has honestly been gaining a lot of popularity over the years. And from the title, I'm sure it's clear that I'm talking about Masters in Management. So before we begin, I want to take some time to explain the structure of the session. It's a pretty straightforward session. From 30 to 40 minutes, we'll be discussing with the main guest. And then in the end, around 15 to 20 minutes, you can ask your questions from Shahmeer. And then post that, we'll wrap it up. So I can see that a lot of people have joined in, and I think now is a good time to do introductions. So I'm Karthike, head of marketing at e-GMAT and your host for the day. And joining us in this session is Shahmeer Naeem. Hi, Shahmeer.
Hey Karthike, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. So Shahmeer is an e-GMAT alumni who scored a 760 with a Q50 and a V42. He then pursued his MIM from LBS and is currently working as an associate at strategy and at the Middle East office. So welcome to the session, Shahmeer. Any opening remarks before we begin?
Thanks, Karthike. I just want to say, then that thanks for inviting me because I feel like I when I was doing my GMAT prep, all these sessions were super helpful. I used to attend all these sessions to know about what's the application process and all. I feel like if this helps people who are currently giving their GMAT or would be applying later, if it can help them in any manner, that would be great. So yeah.
Yeah, uh, these sessions have actually helped a lot of people, and that's why we keep doing them. And guys, before we begin, it would be really helpful if you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. We want to keep doing these sessions in the future as well, and your support means a lot to us. So, Shahmeer, right off the bat, can you describe your profile till the point you got an admit from LBS?
Sure. I had done my undergrad from one of the best business schools in Pakistan, which is Institute of Business Administration. My majors was in marketing, and then minors was in supply chain. I was working. I worked for like 6 months with Kraft Heinz, with Heinz ketchup in their brand management, and then post that I worked for a year and a couple of months with Colgate Palmolive. I was managing the largest toothpaste brand in Pakistan, along with a few smaller variants. So yeah, marketing and brand management was my major background till the point when I started my master in management.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, perfect. And I saw your interview, which was actually 3 years back, like around late 2018, and it was very insightful. So, you made a point in that interview, which was very interesting, that you had a low GPA, which you thought might hinder your chances of an admit. So, can you elaborate on that? And can you tell what was your plan to offset that in your application?
Sure. So two things. First, that my GPA was around 3.4. If you guys look at the average MBA GPAs for one of the any of the top schools, it's somewhere between 3.5 to 3.7. So it wasn't like at that point I thought it was really low, but then in the hindsight, I believe it wasn't really low because my average batch didn't have that low of a GPA. One thing that I did have was a very strong GMAT. Because what happens is your GPA, if someone's studying in one institute and another person is studying another institute, maybe there's a difference in programs. So the GPA is not really standardized. GMAT, on the other hand, it's very standardized. So like schools can just look at your GMAT and say that okay, if your GMAT is good and your GPA isn't that bad, it shouldn't be a problem, because GPAs can vary. You don't really know what the grading criterias are of different places. So one thing that really helped me was a good GMAT score. Other than that, I think my corporate experience, like my job, it was brand management, product management, all of that. So I think that was super helpful, especially for the program that I was applying for, because it was an early careers program. They don't really expect you to have that much experience, but then I had, for the kind of time I had spent there, I had a lot of large projects that I handled, which were really helpful as well. So yeah, a combination of work experience, extracurriculars, and then a very high GMAT. So yeah,
So I just want to add to that, and I want to reiterate what Shamir said. So GPA is generally used as a yardstick to measure your ability or your future ability to handle their rigorous program. So if you have a low GPA, I think you can easily offset it with a high GMAT score, which by the way, Shamir had a really good GMAT score of a 760. So a good GMAT score and a very dedicated effort towards your extracurriculars, I think, can make a good difference. And that was a perfectly answered. That was a perfect answer, Shamir. So uh, you also, actually, I just want to go into the internships that you did. So you did some internships in the tech industry, and you also, I think, worked for the Central Bank of Pakistan. Can you elaborate on that? What kind of experience did you actually gain, and can you share with the audience that like how you can leverage this experience?
sure. Um, During my undergrad, I had like, I did around 5 to 6 internships. They were very different fields, very different functions. So from working in a startup, which is working in an artificial intelligence based uh, program that makes games for special children with Down syndrome and ADHD, to working in the central bank. It was like such a diverse experience that I had. I think what it did help me was uh, show the clarity of purpose, because I had understood how different fields work, how different functions work, and then it had made me realize what I want to do. Right. So the first thing that it helped me was getting clarity of purpose. Second thing was you get a lot of knowledge. Right. The more experience you gain, I'm not saying do every random stuff that there is, but then again, it was relevant to my undergrad, and even my when I was applying for my masters, all of these internships were relevant to that. So gain as much experience as you can, because what happens is in most of the interviews, not just for your masters, but then even post masters for jobs, they ask about situations and stories about the work you did. And then if you have had that much experience, it's very easy to come up with those stories. For example, one of the most common questions is, tell us about a time when you led a team. Now I've had multiple of experiences in which I've led a team, but then the one that I do go back to is one of the extracurriculars I did for undergrad, because I feel like that's a very strong story. So yeah, it really helps to gain as much experience as you can, but then it's not just the quantity, the quality matters as well.
Okay, yeah, and I think it does. So, guys, before we move on, after 30 minutes, you can ask your questions from Shamir. If you have any profile related questions, if you have any GMAT related questions, please ask them now, because we'll be only able to do the Q&A for 10 minutes. So, please post your questions now and we'll ask them. So, Shamir, after that, let's talk about your GMAT journey. And
Sure.
you started with a mid 500 score, if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
and quant was a weakness, I think.
Um, so it's in 3.5 years. I think the first score that I got was Q46, V27, V28. I think verbal was the weakness.
Okay.
Quant was all right.
Okay, because I remember that you took a mock and you kind of scored a Q44, but you had a V41. And I
Did I?
think that, yeah. Anyway, but what I'm trying to say is that you started with a mid 500 score and you ended up with a
Yeah.
760. So, can you walk us through, and can you tell basically what are the mistakes, if let's say you could go 3 years back in time, and if you could tell yourself that, hey, do not make these mistakes, what would be those mistakes be that kind of pushed you to a 760?
I think one of the biggest mistakes that I did made was kind of a burnout. So I started my preparation in October of 2017 and ended up giving my GMAT in May 2018. So it was like a 7-8 month period. Um, what I feel is that I was so pressurized by the thought of giving GMAT. I kind of overburdened myself a lot, and then I would just go off and not study for another 10 days or 15 days or a month. So it was like I had a lot of breaks. Ideally, I would recommend you study with consistently with 2 to 3 months period. Don't spend as much time, and like whatever you do in that time, monitor your weaknesses, keep an error log, see what you're doing wrong, and then probably work on that.
Okay. So very well said. I just want to add one more thing. You talked about burnout, kind of that you kept losing interest. So we have been dealing with a lot of students, who face this situation. And one thing that I have personally realized, and we at e-GMAT have realized, uh, we have realized that students often kind of lose their motivation to not study for GMAT because they do not see growth. So from a 500 to a 760, there lies a 600, there lies a 650, and then a 700. But if you are not seeing yourself go to that 600, not go to that 650, you'll never reach a 760. So that's why whenever we propose a strategy, or whenever students come to us for strategy, we always motivate them to create a plan which has milestones. If you are weak at quant, if you are at a Q44, or see if you are reaching a Q47 before hitting that Q50, because Q50 is the goal, it cannot be a milestone. And when you have that milestone in place, achieving your goals become very easy, and you are at a lesser risk of exhausting, or facing a burnout. And I think that's one of the most important things that you need to keep in consideration while you're studying for the GMAT. But other than that, I think whatever you said, Shamir, makes 100% sense.
I would
So
totally agree with you, Karthik, on this because there was a time. So my first was 550, second was 620, then there was 640, and after 640, I got stuck. Like I wasn't improving after 640. That's when I actually ended up joining e-GMAT because I had hit that score plateau, and like um that was like very frustrating time for me because I wasn't improving for some reason and I had no plan to move forward. And I was like I really appreciated the help with from Rajat on like helping me make the plan and also yeah.
and yeah, I think to have a plan is the best thing that you can do preparing
Make
for GMAT. So let's move on. So you had a grade score of a 760. Were you not tempted to wait and to take experience? Like, what were the factors, or what were the key differences of an MIM that gravitated you towards it? And why did you not go for an MBA?
Um, all right. So obviously, when you have a score like this, you obviously would consider an MBA at some point. However, I worked up some numbers. It was like a very financial kind of a decision. I saw the investment that I'd be putting in for an MBA 3 years down the road, the salary that I'd be earning on those 3 years, the kind of investment I'd be putting in an MIM, the kind of salary that I because I'd be doing it earlier, I'd be making after that 3 years, and then the kind of jumps you get. I also worked up on the kind of work I'd be doing because while I was at Colgate, the work was very fun. I really liked it. It was like very diverse. But then after a certain point, your learning stops because you're working on in the same kind of industry. You're working in the same kind of the tasks are pretty much the same. In consulting, that's not. And I one of the reasons that I wanted to go for masters was so that I can join management consulting. I like sooner is later is better than later because of again three reasons. First, I get to do the work that I want to earlier. B, financially it obviously makes more sense because by the time I have that much experience, I'll be earning way more than I would have had. I would have started making after an MBA. And then third, I can still go for an MBA. My scores, I gave my GMAT in 2018 May, and I can still go for an MBA. I think in 2023 May, and my firm sponsors an MBA. So if I feel like I still want an MBA, I could still go there for after 2 years. So like I still have that door open for me.
Wow. So that does make a lot of sense. But there is one more question that comes here, that MIM has more demand in Europe. Do you agree with that? And would you suggest anyone uh, to pursue an MIM if they want to go for, if they want to work in, let's say, United States?
Um, I think there are a few programs in the United States as well, but as you said, it's largely a European program. Even it's like if you go to a European company or a European office of one of the companies, they would know what an MIN is. In an American office, you will still have to explain it. Or even if you don't have to explain it, it's less heard of. So I guess obviously the advantage is there when it comes to Europe. But then there are other places like I'm currently working in Middle East in the consulting firms and in investment banking. It's very well recognized, and all a lot of the firms do hire a lot of people from here. So I feel like depending on what your goals are in US, yes, it's not as well known, but then in US you have all these other programs like you have masters in data science, masters in financial analysis, all of these things. So you don't have to go for a generic masters if you want to land a job in US. If you want a job in US, you may have a very clear goal, and you're not willing to do an MBA, you can go to any other kind of a master's program.
Very well said, Shamir. And I'm seeing a really good question from Kushagra Ahuja. So I'll ask that, even though Q&A for the end, but I think it makes a lot more sense to ask it right now. So Kushagra is asking, what are the benefits, needs for an MBA after MIM? I think this is coming from the question that you said that by 2023 you can still do an MBA, and how is it helpful, and more importantly, how necessary is it? I think this is a very valid question. So can you answer this?
Yeah, it's not necessary at all. You don't need it. It's in my particular situation, I can do it because when I went for my MIM, I didn't have as much experience. So I feel like I learned a lot by gaining that experience of the industry and then going back. But then, like if you look at the hierarchy plan or your firm development plan, it's pretty much the same. It doesn't make any difference. In fact, I'd be getting a few promotions later than sooner because of if I go for a 2 year MBA. But then overall, I think it's really a matter of choice. You don't have to. I said that like if I feel the need after 1.5 year or 2 years, I can still go for it. I probably won't, but then if I want to, because my master's is like it's from a good school, everyone knows what LBS is. The learning or the academics were all right. The networking you got, the alumni network you had there was amazing, and it's pretty much gonna be same. Like if you go for an MBA from LBS, and if you go for an MIM in LBS, the facility except for the course structure, the facilities, the alumni network, the career center support, everything is pretty much the same. So I don't feel there is a need to. But then like it's a matter of preference. Like I know a friend, she did her masters in management from LBS. She's working in a venture capital now. She's going for a master's in finance because she just realized that finance is an area of interest for her. And then she's going to Columbia because she wants to know more about that particular field. So it's really a matter of choice or matter of what you want out of your career, and specific to that, I don't feel that there's a need for you to go for an MBA unless you have a very specific goal in mind.
Yeah, I agree with you. And even in the previous sessions, people have decided to go for a double MBA. And I think one of the things that you need to know is, why do you need an MBA? And it doesn't need to, basically, you do not need to do an MBA because you feel like it. You need to do it only if you see value, like future value of doing an MBA, and only then you can justify why you want to pursue an MBA in the future. So moving on, so thank you for the question, and please keep posting your questions for the Q&A. So moving on, let me just remove this banner. Yeah. So then, Shamir, you applied to three B schools. You applied to Mannheim, you applied to London Business School, and you applied to HEC. So what was your reason? By the way, these are three very different B schools. What was your reason behind selecting these B schools? And can you share the status? Like, did you get admits from all these B schools later on? Yeah.
Yeah. So the rationale, I know these are very different B schools in terms of the reputation and like the recognition. I feel overall my rationale was driven by three different factors. First was the ROI, and then the ROI also has the component of the kind of jobs you can get after, the kind of country you're going to, the international recognition. Second was prestige, and then obviously the third was the duration of the program. uh, so from an ROI perspective, I think Mannheim is free. There's a very little fee, around 1,500 euros per semester. They're like very very cheap. So from an ROI perspective or an ROI score wise, you were getting a very high score because if you're investing only 5-6,000 euros, obviously whatever salary you make, regardless of where you're working, you'll get a very good ROI. So Mannheim was because of that. HEC and LBS both are internationally very recognized schools. HEC's MIM program is a bit better, and then LBS overall as a school is so much like well known, so much better well known than HEC. Uh, so yeah, that's why I applied to these three schools. I got an admit from all these three schools, but then my rationale was because LBS was such a huge name, and then LBS was in London, so it was an English speaking country. So I felt like it would be easier for me to transition to an English speaking country rather than Germany or France. So yeah, it was a combination of all those factors, but then largely it was the ROI and the prestige. And then I think none of these schools come close to LBS in terms of prestige.
So, if I had to summarize this, location, language, and finance, and prestige,
Also the duration, Mannheim was 2 years,
duration. Okay.
and that 1 year was, there was an opportunity cost, right? If I'm earning, I don't know, 120,000 per year, if I don't, if that extra year I didn't work and I studied in Mannheim, I'd be losing that 120,000 as well. So I mean,
Yeah.
there's a component of ROI in it, that in that as well. So majorly ROI and in prestige, and then these are all functions of it.
So I see a really good question, and even I had that question. So I think I'll directly put that question there. It's from Danish. Basically, what he's asking is that you went for a shorter duration program, and it's not like an executive MBA where a shorter duration makes more sense because you already have a ton of experience behind you. So what was your on-field experience like, or did you get any on-field experience? And with a shorter duration, do you think that on-field experience is maybe what's the value of it, like? Yeah.
I'll tell you what the value is. My undergrad was 4 years in bachelor's in business, right? I studied the same thing for 4 years that I studied for 10 months in LBS. And I'm pretty sure if I'd be doing, because some of our electives were the same as MBA, ultimately the academics are very similar. You don't really get to learn a lot more in terms of academics, right? It's the industry exposure that you get, the alumni network access that you get, the career center support you get, extracurriculars and all of those things. So I feel like a shorter program did help me better suited my profile because I already had a lot of academic knowledge of all of these things. I didn't feel like specifically that I would want to study marketing basics or foundations of economics. I already knew all of these things, right? So academically, I don't think 10-month LBS is like, um, especially for someone like me, it was hard. It was very very easy in terms of as far as academics are concerned. Um, on field experience, yeah, there's a very good, there are a few components with which are related to on field experience. One of them is the London lab of the MIM, which is basically you get to work with one of the corporations for a few months. I think I worked with Accenture, their San Francisco team, with uh, for artificial intelligence based project for around 4 months. And then aside from that, you also have all these trips and experiences, like the gift, which is a global immersion field trip. We went to the Silicon Valley. This was pre-pandemic, so I think coronavirus lockdown started in March 2020, and this was, I think, in December 2019, like a few months before. So we traveled to San Francisco, we went to Silicon Valley, I came to Dubai. The firm that I'm working on at right now, I met them while I was on a school trip, and this is how my application process here got started. So I mean, you get all these exposures or avenues to interact and gain that professional experience, because even though you may not get that experience first, and you always can talk to people who have these, and this 10-month program did provide me plenty of avenues to have that exposure, aside from the 4-month project, which also is a practical exposure. So yeah, it's pretty comprehensive. I don't think this is something you should be worrying about.
So from what you're saying, it seems to me that that you had a pretty straightforward picture of what you want to do. So you belong to that segment who had an idea of what they want to get out of an MIM. So
Yeah.
then a shorter duration course would make sense. So I would also want to cover the other segment of people who do not really know, like they do not know where they want to end up and they want to explore. So would you still suggest a shorter duration course for them, or would you ask them to explore, go for a longer duration course like HEC?
I mean, it does increase the chance for you to discover what you want to do, like the more time you give it. But then, how much time is enough? I don't think 10 minutes is too little. I know a friend who was working in consulting in India before LBS. He went on to, while was targeting his LBS MIM, he didn't know what he wanted to do. He was targeting FMCG, he was targeting a few other fields. He ended up landing a job in one of the largest VCs in India. He's working there, so he didn't even know he wanted that. And then when he got to know about it, he because it the 10-month program, although it sounds short, it does give you plenty of opportunities to learn about all these different fields. Like if you are interested in tech, you can go to the Singapore track, or the global Silicon Valley gift. If you're interested in private equity, there's a German private equity track. If you're interested in a luxury, or even if you're not, you just want to explore, this 10-month program would give you plenty of opportunities or avenues to get exposure and try to understand what is the kind of work they do. Obviously, it's always like, if you are doing a 2-year program, you will have a longer duration to decide. But then how much time is enough? One would argue, okay, if you're doing a 2-year master's, you do another 2 years master to discover what you want. There's like, really, there's no definite answer of what time is best suited for you to discover. But yeah, I guess it does promote your chances to discover if you go for a longer duration program. For me, it was not the case, just by the way.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. So quickly moving on. So you got admit from all the three B schools, and did you get any scholarship?
Yeah, LBS gave me I think it was a 5K, 6K, thousand, say 5, 6,000 pounds award, with like 20% of the overall fee.
Okay, and from HEC?
Now I didn't get a scholarship from LCC, and then Mannheim, I think it's free. So they do have scholarships. I never ended up applying for it because the cost was so low already.
Yeah. So based on the factors that you said before, you went with LBS. So I think now it makes sense that we delve deep into MBA application questions of LBS. So, Shami, like LBS looks for, community driven events, like they host a lot of community driven events, and they are looking for students who would contribute to that community as a student, and not only as a student but also as an alumni. So this is an essay question, so how did you tackle this?
I think it was again two components there. First one was, so you have to demonstrate that you'd be a valuable student for the community of LBS. I had very good undergrad experience. My undergrad was a 4-year BBA. And it was like we were organizing the same kind of events, the same kind of. It was very similar in terms of structure. So what I did was I told them, this is all the stuff that I did in my undergrad, and this is how this stuff is what I can do at LBS, and it would help me contribute towards the overall student community. For example, the Dubai track that I was talking about, that I organized that. Like I was the track lead for it. So it was like I took like 40 students, and both MBA, EMBA, early careers, all of these people. We came to Dubai. We had all organized meetings with all these firms. We had hotel accommodation, flights, everything. We took care of it. Um, so all of the experience that I had gained from undergrad, I just said, okay, I have already demonstrated there, I can contribute there, and I ended up doing that. As an alumni, I feel like there are plenty of avenues, but then the most basic, most easier ones are you being an alumni, you guiding people about your program. For example, a session like this would count as contribution to the LBS alumni community, right? Or the student community, because I'm telling people about, I'm acting as an ambassador of LBS, right? Other than that, I am an interviewer. I take early career interview. So if any one of you are applying, I might be your interview. So I think there are plenty of avenues that you can have, and then all these things. Another thing that, since I had a marketing background and undergrad in business, I said that it will help me because I have worked in the industry. It would help me elevate the class discussions around those topics, which would obviously be beneficial because in MIM cohort you don't have many people with experience. So whatever little experience you have, it can be beneficial. So yeah, that did help a lot as well. So yeah.
And I think I think it's in the approach, like you said, that doing this session makes you an ambassador for LBS. I think that was a very well put point. It's about how you take that B school's name and you make it basically you sell it in a way that everyone else wants to be at LBS. And right now, I think you have easily influenced 40 people to at least consider it, if not go for it. So, yeah, that was a brilliantly answered, amazing answer. Yeah. So, let's move to the interview questions. So they look for a very important quality, which is how do you connect the dots between personal and professional background? And how do you basically link it to your post MBA goals? So, how did you tackle this question?
Um, I feel like for me, it was already, think of the reason why you want to do your MBA in the first place, right? And then everything would automatically fall in place. For example, for me, I was working in marketing. I wanted to work in an industry. Although I loved my job, I wanted to be in an industry where I get to work with different peoples in different geographies, in different projects, in different countries. Uh, and that to me was only possible in consulting, right? And that was the reason I went for my master's, because I wanted to land a job in consulting. So all of the things, all of those factors that you said, uh, connecting the dots, they automatically fell in place. So just think about what is your post career goal, why is it, and then write exactly that. And those are the things that I wrote in my master's application.
Okay, and I think let's ask the most important question, which is where did this MIM take you? Like, what are you doing post your MIM from LBS?
Sure. So I I landed a job during my master's with Strategy and which is one of the largest management consulting firms in the Middle East. I had also interviews with a couple of others. I never ended up giving them because the offer here was fairly good. I liked the company. I met a few people here. Like I mentioned, the track that I came here, I met the people in the company. I love the people. Although the working hours are a bit bad, but then they're constant pretty much everywhere else in the industry as well. So I really like the people. I really like the offer they gave me. So I accepted that in March of 2020. And I was supposed to join right after graduation, but then the pandemic happened. And because consulting in Dubai is mostly traveling, so we have projects in Saudi, we have projects in Bahrain, we have projects in Kuwait, so we have to travel a lot. So my joining was postponed until earlier this year. So while I wasn't here, I was working at LBS only. So I went back to London and I started working as an academic assistant. So I was assisting the private equity courses, the venture capital courses, analysis of financial statements. So mostly finance related faculty with their courses. So yeah, LBS even gave me a job after my masters. So yeah, stayed there till December and then came here. Right now I'm
Perfect.
in Dubai. Yeah, sorry. Right now I'm in Dubai. I'm in management consulting. Exactly what I wanted while I was applying and what I wrote in my applications. So yeah,
Yeah, I think management consulting is one of the hottest fields to work in, and so I think now let's start with the Q&A. Are you ready?
sure.
So
Yeah.
let's start with Bankesh Singla's question. So he asks basically value of MIM and what subjects are there after doing what type of job I can do. Basically, I think you have already answered it. So can you just give a quick overview?
Value of IMIM, it's you treat it as an early career master's, a generic master's subjects. It's pretty much open. You can study accounting, you can study finance, you can study marketing, supply chain, you name it. You can study all of those things. Type of job, every job that you can land after an MBA, except for a private equity. Like even private equity, but then only a few people go in because it's a field which requires a lot of experience. So you have again management consulting, product management, tech, investment banking, finance, all of those fields.
Okay. Then the next question we have from Garima Gupta is: would you suggest MIM for someone who wants to pursue entrepreneurship?
Hmm. Depends on what level of their career are they at right now. Because like if I were to do a master's just to build context, or the relevant knowledge for starting a business, obviously NMIM would serve that. But then if I'm looking at networking with people who are then going to go on and work in VCs and private equities and would be able to finance or support, or you'll have that VC network that you want for those fundings, I feel like an MBA might be a better opportunity. So it depends on really depends on what you want to gain out of your masters.
Okay. Uh, yeah. So the next question, it's a profile related question. I mean, if you can, then answer, but I think it's a very specific question. So basically, Shashank is from a project background in petroleum industry, and do you think that an MIM program will help increase his qualification? Placement opportunities, I think Shashank uh, would be relevant from Shami's experience, but I think if you can answer the first question, Shamir, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think I'm not entirely sure what his undergrad is, but then if his undergrad, he's saying petroleum industry, I'm assuming he's an engineer. He'll get to
Engine.
learn the basics of he'll get to learn the basics of all the business fields, and then he can land a job in any one of these sectors, or even go back to petroleum sector. So I guess yeah, he has good prospects.
Okay. So there is a question related to your profile by Apoorv that you said that you have 4 years of business degree. Did you learn any IT languages while working for machine learning project for 4 months?
No, 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 no. I was in the product team. I wasn't really into the IT field. I feel like it's a very specific kind of a field for very specific people. In business, even though they make it like my LBS program did have R, which is a programming language, right? I didn't learn it much. I don't think any one of the people who have graduated are using it on their jobs. It's pretty useless. Like it looks good on CV. It looks good if you say that you know these things on interview, but then at the end of the day you won't do it off on your job for a couple of years and then you'll forget it. So it's like pretty useless. Like it's good for your college application if that's what you want. If you want to say that I know R, they'd be like, yeah, we teach R. It's good that you know it. But yeah, I guess it's pretty useless
Okay.
unless you want to go in a very specific field. Like I don't know if you want to do a startup of your own, or you if you want to go to financial analysis or business analytics jobs, it would open avenues for you. But then in the general jobs, very rarely do people use it. And especially like all firms have their own software, so even if you learn one of these, you might have to completely redo another one. So yeah,
Yeah, makes sense. What electives did you take up in LBS that helped you get into consulting?
I had a job before I started doing my electives, but my electives were um at I think it's been a year. It was one finance elective, so advanced financial statements. There was one consulting elective, uh, advanced strategic agility or something along those lines, and there was this corporate strategy elective. It's like very generic. Academically, it was all right. Like it's you do cases and stuff. I had already been doing that for 4 years in my undergrad. I The electives lasted for 3 months. I don't think there was like any very strong value in terms of academics for my profile, because I had done all of these things in my undergrad as well. So so yeah, I guess there was this one elective which was very good. It was change management. I really liked that elective. So yeah.
So you said that you had a job even before electives. So I think one thing that people would want to know is that what kind of a profile are folks from management consulting looking for? Like what kind of profile gets a job in management consulting?
I'd hate to say this answer because it's very generic, but then there's no specific profile that these people look at from a profile perspective. But they do look for specific skills. Like if you're good at analytics, if you're good at problem solving, if you're good at teamwork, if you're good at leadership, and then there are various ways to prove all of those things, right? So there's no specific kind of a profile. The engineers work in consulting. People who have language in their undergrad, as in language majors, they work in consulting. So it's very diverse as a field. So there's no specific kind of experience or background or profile that these guys look into, but the skills are there. One of the
Yeah.
most important skills I forgot to mention was adaptability, or the ability to learn, learnability. Because consulting, you are working one day, you're creating a city, next day you're solving cost optimization problem for a corporate, right? So it's like you can't know everything, but the how soon you learn it, that's very important in consulting.
Yeah. So basically, it's a set of traits and not a profile, is what you're saying. And I think that
Exactly.
is very well put. Um, so, one question that I can see, which also makes sense, is that how many students are able to secure a job abroad after MIM from LBS?
Huh. Depends on what I'm assuming this question is very specifically focused for people from the South Asian community, because if you're European, you would get a job in somewhere in European. I think everyone gets a job. Most people abroad. But then if you're talking about South Asian community, I'd say my year was very bad because pandemic happened and a lot of recruitment programs paused. But I'd say 30% from my program. But then most of the people that came into my masters from South Asia, they either had family businesses or they had entrepreneur, like they had startups of their own. So they wanted to go back to their family business. So I'd say of the people who were seeking a job, around 70 to 80% from my batch. But then I'm assuming for other batches it would be higher, because my batch specifically was like the most unlucky one, because the pandemic started in March, and that's like the hot recruitment period from March to August. And then no one was recruiting at that time. So I'd hate to take my batch as a sample, but then if you look at prior reports, a good proportion do. Also depends on what kind of a job you want, because I know a couple of people, they were getting a good job in some other field like product management in London, and they wanted to work in consulting or MBB. So they went back to India and started working in MBB, because that's a better job, or like the kind of work they want to do. So it really depends on what you want to do. Abroad, ultimately, you now that now the London even has a 2 year visa thing, right? So if you study in London, you get an additional 2 years visa. I think now it's very easy for you to land a job, but then the quality of that job depends on your profile, your experience, your skills. So yeah, that's something that you should think into.
Okay. And I think we are getting very similar questions, but I'll just ask one more very similar question that we have, that job prospects after LBS MIM, basically opportunities, are there opportunities available in India? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
can
yeah.
okay, and what
Yeah,
kind of
so
opportunities are there?
I told you about one of my friends who's working in VC.
Yeah.
Another friend was working in McKinsey. Another friend was working in BCG. I think someone from my batch also landed a job in Bain, India. So consulting jobs are there. I think investment banking is there. Startups are hiring a lot in India. So the startup scene is very good in India. From what I know, I'm not an Indian, but then from what I hear from my friends, I feel like startups do hire a lot of MIM graduates from India as well.
Okay. So I think MIM or MBA the better option. So Kushagra is asking which one is better, and he has kind of mentioned 2 points that we should consider. Basically, someone who is not sure about their career direction and wants to explore, and someone who knows that and just wants to grow into management positions.
I
So
think as a standalone question, it's a very bad question because you don't know what kind of career stage of career is that person, what kind of profile does he have, what he wants to do after it. Like there's no specific. Maybe he wants to, I don't know, work in a social startup somewhere in Europe, and then the question is like very generic. It's really hard to answer this kind of a question. But then Kushagra, if you can like share with me your actual goals or your profile, I think I'd be better able to comment on it. But right now it's like very hard because it really depends on a lot of other things than just these two things.
Um, yeah, that makes sense. But I think Kushagra basically is so. I think so. Even we can answer it right now. Basically, will you have the opportunity to explore different positions in an MIM, or do you
Obviously,
think
yeah.
that MBA would be a better platform to do that, or
No, no,
both?
definitely. He'll have a lot of, as I mentioned earlier, he'll have the ability to explore different career options, even if he goes for a 10-month MIM, but there are also 2-year MIMs in which he can spend more time. So you can explore direction, but then commenting on which one is better, it's very hard to do that.
Okay.
Obviously I think that if you do an MBA, you kind of have a better sense of either what you want to do or what you don't want to do, because you would have worked in some kind of a space, right? So you would have the kind of idea that this is what I like and this is what I don't. So if that's the case, if you know what you don't want to do from your experience, because that's and by the time you are going for an MBA, you have spent that time in corporate world as well, right? So I think MBA might be better in that case.
Okay. So I think I'll just ask one more question, which is related to LBS Alumni Network. How supportive do you think the LBS Alumni Network is?
Amazingly supportive. It's extremely supportive. You can just reach out to people on LinkedIn. They'll write in references for you. They'll guide you on how to approach your job. They'll guide you about the interviews. They'll guide you about the kind of work they do, all the pros and cons. They'll be super honest, very helpful in this particular. Like I feel like it's one of those schools which has a very closely knit alumni network, and they're extremely helpful, like more than I ever thought they would be.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the ways that you can help the LBS community, like they ask, is through helping your own in the LBS. So I think that's one more way. I think just one more question. So
Sure.
honestly, the answer to is very straightforward, but I'll let you take it up. So Mayank has 6 years of banking experience. Should it be
MBA.
MIM or MBA? I think
MBA.
it's MBA clearly. Like 2 more years and you'll be in the executive zone. So MIM definitely not Mayank. So thank you so much, Shamir. I think with this, we are going to end the session. And uh, I hope all of you liked it, and I would request you to subscribe to our e-GMAT channel so that we can keep doing these sessions. So next week, let me share my screen. So, yeah. So next week on MBAlytical, we have a session on ISB YLP with Sushant Rawa and Sanjay Dhingra, former ISB admissions officer. So, what are the eligibility criteria to apply to ISB YLP? What is the role of GMAT? Do you need a very high GMAT score or not? And normal interview tips. So this is the next session on MBAlytical, and other than that, we'll also have 2 sessions on GMAT, one on Saturday and one on Sunday, depending on where you are. So the first session that we'll have is of GMAT sentence correction webinar, and in that webinar, you'll learn how to leverage meaning and logic to solve difficult SC questions. And uh, the next day, we have GMAT number properties webinar, where you will learn the core number properties concept required to score a Q50. And the links for these sessions have been shared in the live chat section. And I hope I see you in these webinars as well. So, Shahmeer, thank you so much for doing this session. Do you have any closing remark before we
Nah,
end
just
this session?
thanks a lot, Karthike, for inviting me. I feel like these are the kind of opportunities that help a lot, not just in terms of guiding students but also building the community, because I know w- once you go abroad, all of the South Asians are pretty much the same. So yeah, I guess that's very interesting. And I feel like if you guys have any further questions, you can obviously reach me out on LinkedIn. I may take some time, but I would obviously definitely reply. So yeah, feel free to reach me out on LinkedIn if you have any further questions. And thanks a lot, Karthik, and thanks a lot, e-GMAT, for having this session.
Yeah, I think your LinkedIn is about to get a lot of requests. So yeah, and thank you so much, Shamir, for doing this session. And with this, we are going to end this live session now. And I personally hope to see you next week for our ISB YLP session. And good night or good morning wherever you are. So thank you so much, guys. Bye.
Cheers, Karthik.